All right, today we are talking with the creators of Genius Animals. Um, I'm going to let them introduce themselves here in a second because I'm really bad at names. But the book is a, comedic mystery about the situation where you think your relationship is going well one day, and then your significant other disappears, and then you try to figure out what happens. And you can't tell if you've been ghosted or you have to save all of humanity. So let's bring them in, and I'll let them tell you more about the book. Hi, guys.
Hey, how are you doing,
Hi,
sir?
how you doing, Chad?
So introduce yourself, and you, one of the questions I'd like to ask is, how did you get into comic books? Do you remember the first one that you read, or the one that got you hooked, and what made you want to become a creator yourself?
Wow. Okay. Hi, I'm Jun-Pierre Shiozawa. You could just call me June. Uh, I've been reading comics since I was a kid. I mean, if we're thinking also, the Sunday papers, Calvin and Hobbes, Foxtrot, for better for worse. But as far as comic books, uh, I got pretty much hooked right around the big. I got to say the biggest selling comic of all time, or at least in the States, X-Men. X-Men #1 got me. I remember my friend in school. He brought it. He was so pumped. He was so pumped that this kid, who was usually very quiet, like got the entire classroom around him because he was so excited about his new comic. And I was one of those kids that was like, "Wow, what is going on here?" So yeah, it was actually X-Men 2 was like the first one that I actually got myself. Um, and as far as and I think I started drawing, like copying comics and drawing comics, and always dreaming about being getting into comics, pretty much from like day one, like from those very first books. So yeah, Jim Lee, Chris Claremont, they hooked in another kid.
Their pushing worked.
That did.
My name is Vali Chandrasekaran. I'm the writer of Genius Animals, and I got into comics. I think my first experience was when I was probably around 4 years old. I became obsessed with the Christopher Reeves Batman, Superman movies. My family didn't even have a VCR, but somehow we had a tape of it. And anytime we would go over to a friend's house, I would bring that tape and I would just watch the whole movie. And now I have 4-year-old twins, and I started recently showing it to them. And it's interesting watching it years later, like they're still transfixed by the same stuff that I remember getting into when I first watched it. But also, the movie is kind of wild by contemporary standard. Like, you don't see Clark Kent in Metropolis for an hour. Like, it's a 2.5 hour movie, and the first act build is really slow. And it's still awesome. Like, you see Marlon Brando, and they're on Kryptonite, and like then you see him as his farm boy, and my kids love all of that stuff. But you don't hear like the Superman music and see him like rip open his dress shirt for so long, which is a thing that you would never imagine doing now. Like, if I were working on a Superman movie, I would just be like, how do I hear this music very early on and then figure out a way to like flashback and see all of that old stuff. So that was like sort of my intro into superheroes. And then like June, I loved the funny pages. Like, I always wanted to be a comedy writer. I'm a TV comedy writer by my main vocation. I spent my career writing on My Name is Earl and 30 Rock and Modern Family. I've always loved jokes. Like, I was obsessed with Letterman and David Letterman and Saturday Night Live growing up. I loved The Far Side. I still love The Far Side. I think it's maybe the funniest thing that has ever been created. I love reading Calvin and Hobbes. But I didn't really read like floppies and issue comics for a really long time because I wasn't so into the superhero stuff, and I loved comedy and weird things. And then I got to college, and some friends started showing me Daniel Clowes and Chris Ware and these indie comic books, and I thought like, oh, I never even knew anything like this even existed. Like, I've never seen these stories and this weird tone that are real. It's really funny, but also sad. But I think the book that like really broke it open was someone I know had a copy of From Hell, and we were all living in on campus for the summer, and people would just like give it to each other, and that night everyone would go, the person would go home and stay up all night and read the entire book, and then come in the next day and be
Wow.
like wide-eyed and would be like, uh, you have to read this. Like, I mean, people
That's
knew
a that's a big that's a pretty big book to read in one day.
talk about it, because I mean, it was just the look of it and what it was about, and the vibe of it was so great and so rad, and that kind of broke open to me like, this is a totally weird, interesting genre that can really knock you down in a way that I didn't know comics could knock you down and like make you feel and tell. Who's gonna tell this weird genre historical story that's also about murder and all these things that are so funny and power and interesting, and the Freemasons. I loved it.
Corruption at the very highest levels. I mean, that's quite a book to read in one night. Just be like, hey, I got it for one night. I got to finish this thing. I mean, it's an epic.
You knew the next day someone else was going to want it at that point. Like, once it went through a couple of people, you're like, this is all I get.
Yeah.
Also, when you're in college, you can get away with like going to bed at 7 a.m.
True. So how did you make the transition from writing for television to comics?
So I was working on 30 Rock, which is a great show that I loved a lot, and the hours were very, very brutal. And I'm married, and my wife is like me, grew up in the United States, but she had taken a job where she was working in India. And I would sometimes get off of work at 10 p.m. and you would never make plans with anyone because you didn't know if you'd make them that night or not. So I would come home. I was already married, so it's not like I wanted to go out and meet people. I couldn't make plans with friends who were just working in the city because I was breaking them so much. I didn't want to annoy them. I didn't want to keep hanging out with people I'd spent all day at work with. So I would come home and I would just put on some music or put on a radio show, and I wanted to write something. And I wanted to write something that I felt was kind of just fun and for me and kind of unproducible, that I might be used as a movie script to get other work. So I wrote this story for Genius Animals, which is really was based on my deep love for Thomas Pynchon and the Big Lebowski, and really just weird sort of episodic or like Odyssey style storytelling of a character who goes on this long journey, and it feels like it's getting weirder and weirder, and it's also funny, but it also seems like it could be set in reality. And I wrote it and I finished it, and I kind of just used it to get other movie work afterwards. And people would ask me, do you want to make this as an animated show? Because there's really big things that happen in it. Because I don't want to give too much away, but it's called Genius Animals for a reason. Like, our main character is wondering if there's something that she's unlocked about the fate of humanity. And they would ask me like, oh, it seems like you could maybe animate it. I don't know if you could make it as a movie without a gigantic CGI budget. And I would always say, I don't think I want it to be animated. I think like this story works the best when it's like The Matrix, where it kind of feels like, oh, is that deja vu? I as the viewer have experienced deja vu in real life. What if The Matrix is real? And like the way you interact with The Matrix is not like you're just taking on a piece of entertainment. You start to think like, man, this really is a trippy idea, but could explain the world I live in. And I felt like animation doesn't really do that. But then years later, and June can talk a little bit more about this, I met June and we started talking, who knew a lot about comics in an academic way. And we started talking about it, and I realized, oh, even though comics are drawn, the way we interact with a comic book or a graphic novel or a book like From Hell is it feels like it's depicting reality. Like, it's just that happens to be the genre by which we're looking at this real story. And I interact with it in a different way, like I might be describing regular life. And I started to get excited about the idea of telling the story of Genius Animals via a comic book. and because it's really a genre blending book that has this mystery, and it's a love story, and it's romantic comedy, and there's just big funny pieces in it too. Comic books, especially indie comic book, that's almost a requirement. Like, it's supposed to be weird. If you're not making something weird, then you might as well not be in the genre at all. So it kind of felt like a better marriage. And June and I started talking, and we decided to just take a swing and see if we could make this book. And June can talk about a little bit more of that too.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that was maybe my next question is, how did you guys meet, or how did you? What's the secret origin of your, your partnership?
it was I guess in a way by chance. I mean, we have so Vali's wife and I, we attended the same art school. This was years ago, back when we were in college. This is a study abroad school called the Aegean Center, based in Greece. And we studied there for a semester. And years later, I ended up teaching there. And it's an incredible school. It's a very small school. But then when I left the school, I continued doing these workshops, these watercolor workshops, which I do when we are able to move around freely and paint and travel in different places around the world. That's what I usually do. So one year I did it in Ireland, and Vali and his wife, they attended. It was something that we were discussing. They brought their kids, their twins, and both sets of parents or grandparents, I'd say, for the twins, which was remarkable. Like, just a true logistical achievement, because everybody was there. It's this beautiful family, a large crew, and meanwhile we were doing the classes. We were painting. We were moving around. This was in west of Ireland, and just outside of Galway. And during that time, I mean, it was pretty much, class time, getting to know one another, talking about art and just, different ideas. But I'm not sure if I actually were discussing comics at that particular time. But we were talking about just each other as, creative individuals. And then, almost a year later, I did some Inktober sketches. Inktober is when you just do a drawing every day, just ink. And I was doing something. It's basically like a project I've been wanting to do for years. It's about my parents, and which is just like how they met. My mom is French, my dad is Japanese, and their let's say their love story is pretty incredible. And so I just always wanted to put something together. And so my Inktober pages were really just like a little taste of that, because I think it would take far longer to put anything like that together. And meanwhile, Vali he was sort of checking around, and it was thanks to him that he actually was like, hey, maybe would you be interested in doing something a little bit more like an actual graphic novel? And I mean, I thought about it, I mused about it, but to actually take it seriously, no one really had asked me directly about that. So I was pretty, I guess I was pretty flattered, but also taken aback, like, I wonder what he's seeing here. So that kind of led to us just having more prolonged conversations about what could be possible in the medium. And just based on the story itself, of there is a little sense of reality or slight distortion of reality, but once you get into the book, you're really immersed in it. So, which is, I think, why, especially in the very beginning of Genius Animals, there is this effect of, we zoom out from there's a cartoon that's playing. It's basically like what would be like a Bugs Bunny type of cartoon, but we kind of did our own little spin to it, and it zooms out. And so the very first page of panel, it's like this cartoon rabbit, and you're like, okay, is this the world that we're in, of this cartoon rabbit? But then when we zoom out, we're in a bar. We're in a bar, and the people are sort of like real people, or they're like us in a way. And it's just sort of like, okay, now we have to adjust. Okay, we're actually more like these characters. And that play of just how we can associate, who we associate with as the leading character. It's really cool how we could kind of just, as readers, just switch and understand it almost instantly. Yeah.
I'll also wanted to add to that, like one part I think of us coming together was, at this point I had spent over a decade writing for TV and movies, and you start to like find your rhythm in that in a way that's really good, because you get faster, you become a better craftsperson. But the other side of it is you start to feel like you're in a little bit of, you've got your moves that you always use all the time. Like we sometimes, our shorthand for it is Shift F7, because in like Microsoft Word, if you hit Shift F7, the thesaurus pops up and you're just like, I want a different word here. But it's the same idea or the same move. So it was really fun to go to this watercolor painting workshop where I was like, I'm going to be able to make art that, because it's not comedy, it's not for movies, it's not for television, I won't feel like a judgment towards it. Like I'm just like have literally a clean piece of paper to make something from nothing, and I'm not operating in any sort of tradition or set of expectations for myself. And that's not that easy to do when you're deep into a creative career. And I think that helped unlodge something and maybe make me think of something different. But also the setting of Ireland, like there's a reason Irish literature is so weird. You're looking around and you're like, this place is bleak and beautiful. I understand why Martin McDonagh and James Joyce are from here. Like it's a place whose art is really seems formed by the physical space that you're in, and it's really funny too. It's really like, it's broken and funny and really strange, and all the way going like not just recently, but like you look at Tristram Shandy and it's really weird. Like and I think all of this stuff sort of came together to kind of make us be like, let's try and make something weird that tricks people into thinking they're reading a regular romantic comedy, and then they're actually reading something way, way stranger.
So that's a great segue. You kind of give a overview of the book. Who are the main characters? And without giving anything away.
So the book is the lead character of this book is a young girl in her 20s named Alexandra Lakshmi. She's a half Indian, half Greek girl. A little bit character design wise, like a blend between my wife and June's wife. As June was designing the characters, we found that happening. I think that's a little bit of her personality as well. And she works in New York, and she has her roommate and best friend, this girl named Finnegan, who works for the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, basically like making sure food trucks are up to snuff, but considers herself like part of the law enforcement machine that keeps New Yorkers safe. It's very important to her that she protects her citizens. And Alexandra, her job is she works for a documentary filmmaker who's pretty heavily based on filmmaker Werner Herzog, who I love, and I also think makes beautiful art that is very funny and very bleak and gets into the core of human understanding. But he also deals a lot with this idea, which is narrative truth. Like why do people need stories, and how do we tell stories that get at the core of truth? And that's a big theme in this book, because Alexandra and Finnegan are trying to figure out the truth behind something big that seems to be happening in their world. Like Alexandra's boyfriend suddenly disappears and she wants to know why. Like, is this just a case that you hear of all the time of a guy who's a little bit of a D-bag who doesn't have the the stomach to break up with a girl and just stop calling her? Or is there something bigger? Because she said it seems like we had a nice connection, and she wants it to be something bigger. But when she starts to find the bigger thing that it might be, she wonders if she wouldn't rather just have been ghosted. We wanted to come up with a situation where both options seemed really, really bad. Like either she couldn't trust her mind and she was going crazy, or she can trust her mind and she's maybe that is the craziest thing she's ever thought of in her entire life, and that's really true.
Yeah, and I think with with Alexandra and Finnegan, the two main characters, especially Alexandra, she's going through this journey, this quest to find out what's going on. We really can sense that she is learning things, questioning herself, discovering what's going on. But altogether, like she's a pretty average person. I mean, she's just she's found herself in this crazy situation, and how she's navigating through it and meeting all of these different crazy characters, and her constantly having to push forward, propel herself forward. In a way, we learn that there is this this strength to her, this courageous aspect to her, and she is the hero. I mean, she's the one who is guiding us through the story. And at least as I was reading the script for the very first time, that really appealed to me, because she's just this, where she's introduced in a pretty, just like a common environment, everyday environment. And ultimately she is just somebody who is just, living her life, trying to, she has a happy relationship with this guy, and then all of a sudden just everything goes upside down and she's totally lost. So how did she move forward through this? And so I think just how this character isn't some sort of big flashy super powered protagonist, but just really just it's really just this person who we get to know, we get to basically we're riding alongside with her, and she shows us that, well, yeah, she's actually full of mettle, and she's full of hearts, and she's able to be our guide to this entire story.
So let's talk a little bit about the creative process. Do you two bounce ideas off of each other? Do you how did that work for you when you were creating this OGN?
It was, I come from TV, which is a very iterative process where we work together. It's very collaborative, and we work a lot and refine a lot. Our starting place was I had a completed movie script for the story, and I didn't really know what the format for writing a graphic novel was. So after talked to Jun and told him about it, I gave him the movie script, and he took that movie script and he kind of sketched out what the whole book might look like, and also sketched out various character designs, and we sort of went back and forth on that, and we picked something. And then there was a little bit of a process of sketching out different scenes of the book, where at first we didn't really know what we were doing, and we kind of stumbled through it, and Jun would draw me like sketches of a section and tell me what was going to be happening, and I'd be like, I don't know, this looks good to me. And then I would get it back and suddenly realize, like, oh, I don't think the joke is quite landing as well as we wanted to. Like, how do we figure out how to make get us the right comic timing for some of these jokes? And that would be something we would sort of refine. And then I feel like we did that a lot at the beginning. Like, we did the first third of the book, then we went back through and made some changes, or even just made notes on it, and then taking that understanding, moved forward and did the rest of the book, and then based on what we learned in the rest of the book, came back and refined the beginning of the book. And we were basically constantly editing it. Like, we released the chapters every Tuesday for 8 weeks, and we were revising the chapters right until we were about to put them up on the site. In fact, in one instance, after we had put something up, we went back and revised it again. If we go forward and do this as a print book, mm-hmm. I imagine there'll be another round of revisions. It's sort of a good and bad thing about comics, and that a webcomic is that they're never they're never completely done. Like, we're basically have moved on and are doing other things from it, but it can always be made better. And sometimes it feels silly to not just make it better when you know what to do.
Yeah, and I have to say,
So,
like, for me, because I was just going to jump in. I've only been, I mean, I'm primarily a painter or a teacher. I mean, most of the work that I've done, it's very solitary. Okay, when I'm teaching, obviously that's different, but if I'm just doing my own work, you know, it's just my own images, my own ideas, and even the comics that I've done in the past, they've all been my own stories. So I've never actually worked in this capacity with somebody else. And I could really tell that Vali had this experience of working in sort of a team situation, even though it was just basically the two of us together, just because there was this responsive quality. And I wasn't just sort of in a, let's say, in a vacuum by myself working on this. So just having this continuous, I mean, it was continuous. Every page, every week, we'd sort of put out some notes back and forth. And so we were tweaking page by page the entire look and feel of the story to get things like, yeah, like the jokes down, the rhythm right, just like the overall feeling down. And I mean, this is my first graphic novel. This is both of our first graphic novels. So I think it was really both of us just also just, you know, traveling through this together, getting a sense of like, does this work? Does this feel right? What do you think? Yeah, I guess, or no, not really. So let's go back and do it over again. And I thought that was actually one of the things that I'll take with me the most from this whole experience, that we just kind of went with our gut and decided to just do it this way, because I don't have that many. I mean, I read a lot of comics, but I haven't really done comics in a really long time. I have just a few friends in the industry, and yeah, in a way, I just felt like we just had to kind of find out for ourselves how to do this. And yeah, and it was really cool is that by doing it, now we have more contacts, we have more people that have been, you know, engaging us, and then also that we could talk to. And then, you know, if there wasn't for this, you know, this pandemic thing that's going on, we probably would be, of course, going into conventions and stuff like that, because we actually have a book. I mean, we have something to show and to talk about. And what I found is that it's amazing how easy it is to just kind of share ideas with other creators and to reference that. So I know for sure that the next project, the next book, it would just be full of all of these experience, all of this new information, just like how to move forward on a book like this.
Yeah, we've been really amazed by how true it is that people in the comics world are pretty tight and they help each other out a lot. And they love telling stories of how to help each other and sharing stories of everyone has that loves swapping their like most humiliating moments stories, which are also great.
Yeah, I feel like creators get charged and energized when they just like swap stories about, you know, make people making stuff and people like putting something together. Like they it's like being in the trenches, and they want to hear your war stories. They want to hear what it's like when you're just like, you know, on page 74, whatever, and you're just like grinding it out, and it's just, you still have a whole nother 100 pages to go, and you just like, psychologically, what the heck is going on in your brain? Like, how are you able to, what did you do? This is what I did, you know, this type of stuff. And it's at least I think for us, it's pretty fascinating. Like it's really cool to hear like what it takes, what people, because yeah, the creative part of it, like just like the story of getting it done and making it to the end, often is just as interesting as like the story itself, you know. It's so yeah, it's been really interesting, just like getting feedback from other creatives, other artists, writers, hearing about their own, like what they did for themselves.
Well, I'm still reading the book that you guys sent me, but I did get a really good chuckle out of the Geely, the Snyder Cut panel when they're flipping through the TV. And
Yeah, that
you know,
that one has gotten
it's
some
little,
love.
like those little things that. What was that?
That joke has gotten some love. That's one of the joys of being able to put up a comic up on the web and revise it a lot.
Yeah, that one is sort of like a last minute call, and I think it's like really great that that Vali changed that one. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I think that was the night before we put up that chapter.
Totally.
We changed what that one was.
Yeah, night before.
Yeah, I think, and even it's funny because I think like that joke lands more now than it did even a couple of weeks ago. Like the Snyder Cut stuff is even a bigger part of the culture than it was a month ago.
Yeah, because when I first Vali sends the email and he's just like, I got this idea. He brings it up and I'm like, that's hilarious, but I'm just not sure how well that will read because I mean, the Snyder Cut. And then he's just like, let's just do it. And the truth is that now, like, everybody knows about the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, weirdly.
And so that was 2 months ago, I guess. I mean,
yeah, it was about 6 weeks ago. And it really felt like it was really like, this is a joke for you, me, and like weird people who are into this right now. But now I feel like it's everywhere. I would also, by the way, watch the Snyder Cut. I would totally.
I was trying to explain the joke to Dora, to my wife. It was such a confusing thing to try to describe, like all of the beats. At first, I had to start with Geely, like what Geely meant at the time.
Yes.
And then just to bring it home to like who the heck Zack Snyder is. And what it meant.
It's really a synthesis of who we are, to find like who you and I are, and when we were born, and what culture we watched and paid attention to. That's you can imagine. Most people you would explain all of those things to, and then they're like, okay, now I don't understand why it's a joke. It's just a set of things and that you put together, and maybe they're right. I don't know.
You find that your comic timing has changed, from writing for a TV show to writing for the comic page?
Yeah, that was probably the biggest lesson for me. I mean, the actors that I've gotten to write for on TV are really skilled, commanding actors who can kind of say anything. Like Alec Baldwin. You could write a page-long speech with weird turns of phrase in them and weird hairpin turns in attitude, and he's such a great actor that he can make it work, and it'll be funny. And the same with the cast of Modern Family and Ethan Suplee and Jason Lee on My Name Is Earl. Like, they're so amazing, and I loved doing that. I mean, 30 Rock is really dense, and jokes would be stacked. Like normally, where you would on a lot of other shows where you would end the line as the joke, we would often write another sentence after that to kind of push the joke further. And that was my impulse all the time, because that's how I was really enjoying that style of writing. But in comics, people do not want to read huge page-long blocks of text. So a lot of what we did was just go through and cut and cut and cut and cut as many words as we could and figure out how to make those turns feel fun and how to like create the space in the air to make the punchlines land. And that was really something that June came in with a bunch of ideas for, and we kind of made better over time. Because I'll admit, like, I would get some panels back and I would say, I love how this looks, and I don't know why, but this panel just isn't funny right now, and maybe we should, the section just isn't funny, maybe we should cut the joke. And June would say, let me take another pass at it. I have an idea for this, maybe it'll land. And it would be sometimes putting a blank panel in between so you could feel the comic timing, you could feel a beat, or it would be breaking the lines differently in it, or putting part of the setup in another panel, or just cutting it because you don't even need it. And he would figure out a way to make the timing work, or make it work without the actual punchline, but with a look. And that was to me, coming from as a comedy writer, that was the most fun part of this part of it. Like, the comedy was coming alive in a different way that I'll be honest, like, I would search for funny moments in other graphic novels and comics, and I really think that June helped find a comedy, like, rhythm and tone that I don't see in a lot of graphic novels. I don't know that I've seen in a lot of places before, because it's just different from other stuff that we've seen and love. And it's not a 3-panel comic the way that you often see jokes. Like, it's a long graphic novel, and you have to stay on story, and it can't be done then. And I was really thrilled with the rhythm and the set of tools he invented to make a funny narrative graphic novel.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's rad. And it's been, I think readers are feeling that too. It's not just me.
I just want to say, like, the thing about the, jokes and making things funny in a comic is, little subtle things that, I guess they're actually not that subtle at all, that a lot of actors might use. If it's live action, if it's on film or TV, it's, it could sell the joke so well. It could just be like a snicker or a shrug or roll of the eyes. And all of these little things often take a bit of movement, or like there's a sort of a timing element to it. And so, but oftentimes the joke isn't meant to be like this big dramatic thing. It's sort of kind of floating underneath. And so, like, to emphasize something like a shrug or like a snicker or something like that, it's almost contradicting the feeling of the joke, which is meant to be just sort of like just sliding through. So it's like, how do you balance this sense of like making the joke feel subtle because it is subtle, but also making it clear enough to see, making it legible visually? And that was something that honestly I found the most challenging, because you could feel the joke was there. You wanted to like draw attention to it, but at the same time, not make it like just that. Like, there's still other things happening. The story's going on. They're just that's just how they riff. That's just like how the main characters just like they riff off of one another. So you don't want to make such a big deal out of it. So a lot of times it would just be kind of like, putting in a visual gag. Sometimes it would be just like adding an extra beat. But that is definitely something that I think we were both learning on the fly. Like, it's something that, I mean, by the end of the book, we kind of get more of a sense of the rhythm, but a lot of the jokes and the funny stuff, like the banter between like Finnegan and Alexandra, that's more in the beginning of the book. So I often thought after the fact, like, what it would have been like if I had done almost the earlier pages at the end of the experience, because I feel like just I was kind of working in a different way. As it happens, like it always happens like that, I think, when one is working in a graphic novel.
What you're saying about that subtle stuff reminds me of this famous story from the pilot of Frasier, that, David Hyde Pierce plays Niles, and they knew he was a great comic actor, but everyone was a little bit wondering, like, look, we got this, the brother is more Frasier than Frasier, and is that going to work? And how are you going to sell this? And how's the audience going to understand this? Because I don't think they really talked about him on Cheers. I don't think they introduced, I think maybe
I don't think so.
Frasier didn't even have a brother on Cheers.
Yeah.
And there's a moment in he's in one scene of the pilot, I think, and there's a moment where they meet in the coffee shop, and before sitting, and it's a fancy coffee shop, and Seattle coffee shop, and before Niles sits down for the first time to meet Frasier, he pulls out a handkerchief and he wipes down the seat before he sits on it. And that's like a kind of moment that everyone talks about, like, then we got the character. Like, this guy is so snobby, he can't even sit down on a fancy coffee shop table, a chair, like a French bistro chair without wiping it down, and he threw it away. It wasn't a big part of the joke. He did it in a way that you made it clear, like, this is something I do all the time without thinking about it. And that small bit of behavior kind of unlocked the character and revealed to the audience what, in a subtle way, what was funny about this guy. And yeah, he's one of the great characters of TV history now. Man,
David Hyde Pierce, what a find.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I remember just when they showed the early commercials before it even started airing, and I'm just like, wow, he actually kind of looks like him. He kind of looks like Kelsey Grammer. And then like he's just like a comedic heavyweight. He's incredible.
He's incredible. I think the casting director saw him in a play and kind of said, we need to find a way to put this guy in the spinoff. And they kind of went like, and other people saw him and people were like, this guy is too amazing to not be on TV.
Wow.
So is there anything else you'd like to mention about the book? Where can people find it? Where can people follow you on social media?
Yes, you can find the book. The entire thing is free online. We were going to put it out through a publisher, but then the pandemic happened and we were going insane at home, and we thought everyone else might be going insane at home too. Why don't we put out this book as a form of escape? And we've been really thrilled with the response. It's at geniusanimals.net. If you just go to the website, and you can see the entire book is online there now. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRealVali. And June, where's the best place to follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Just at Jun-Pierre. That's one word, just without the my first name without the hyphen.
And if you like it, tell your friends. We want people who like weird, funny comics to find the book and check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, are anything else in the works between the two of you, or just kind of get this one under your belt?
Everyone keeps asking us this, and I always wish we have a better answer to this question. I'm writing a TV pilot right now, and I'm almost done with that, and that's taking like all my creative output. But we're not done with our partnership. I just don't have my next idea, but I think June has stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that, like, exactly. I mean, I think we kind of feel like Genius Animals is still kind of like taking up our time together, and but like there always feels like, well, this is definitely to be continued because it worked so well.
Yes.
This last project, and I mean, kind of the same thing for myself. I mean, since everything happened, I'm doing a lot more teaching online and doing my own work, and hopefully I am going to actually sit down and work on that graphic novel about my parents. But it's one of those things where when I decide to do an actual project like that, it means like, okay, this is going to be a big investment of time, because
next year.
Yeah, it takes a long time to do these.
Well, if you guys ever, have something, either together or individually, you're more than welcome to, back on, and we'll talk about that. And I want to thank you guys for taking the time to, talk, and it's been great. And sorry for the prior delays.
No problem. Thanks so much for having us on.
Thanks for having us on, sir.
I will include the links in the show notes, and I guess I'll let you know when it goes up.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much.
That sounds great. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you. Let me see them just throw that up for a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Sorry.
Awesome.
See, professionalism. All righty. So that's where, if you're watching this, you can find out more about my stuff. You can subscribe to the channel to watch more awkward interviews. And, and we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chad.
All right. Take care,
All the
guys.
best.
Bye.
Take care.